So, Michael, of course, it is the end of the year. It's the end of 2023. Maybe this video will even be uploaded in 2024. Wow.
Yeah, incredible. That's crazy.
Of course, me and you, we do this thing where we predict the movie scores on Rotten Tomatoes for releases in a given year. And yeah, we add up the total, how far away we are from the actual Rotten Tomatoes score. So the higher score is worse. And yeah, we have a winner at the end of the year. It's the end of the year, and we have a winner.
I think I do know who the winner is.
Who is it?
I think it's you. I think I saw that because I think I banked on the Wonka movie being a bit of a failure.
No. You just have the worst memory. Remember, we guess the Wonka score didn't affect anything.
Wait, okay. So what were we? Oh, we're guessing Aquaman, weren't we?
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah, you are right. I had the worst memory because I was thinking it was hanging on the Wonka score. So no, I don't know anything about the Aquaman score. This could be interesting.
So you guessed 49. That's the score you get on Rotten Tomatoes. I guessed 68.
Yeah, okay. Now I have heard bad things about the Aquaman movie.
Yes, so that means if it's 49 or less, of course you win because there was an 18 difference between us.
Wow.
And indeed, it was less than 49. It was unbelievably 37.
Wow.
You beat me by 1. I can't believe how bad Aquaman turned out to be. The thing is, The Flash got 63% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Well, again, see, I don't know. I feel like maybe a situation where The Flash was interesting.
Do you realise this means that this Aquaman movie has to be horrendous? Because the Eternals, that superhero movie, got 47%. This has to be horrific.
Yeah, I was listening to a review about the Aquaman movie, and I don't even remember the only thing I took away from the review was just it's bad. I don't even remember any of the specific points. I think literally what they said was every single plot point was just wasted and went nowhere.
Yeah, that's no surprise. What a sad end to a sad DCEU.
Yeah.
And speaking of sad stuff, now let's transition into Schindler's List.
Yeah,
that was very smooth.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the release of the movie Schindler's List. So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Schindler's List?
Sure thing, Michael. So Schindler's List is a 1993 American epic historical drama directed and produced by Steven Spielberg and written by Steven Zelain. It is based on the 1982 novel Schindler's Ark by Australian novelist Thomas Keneally.
Oh, that's crazy. I thought it was based on a true story.
Yeah, it's crazy. The movie stars...
It's crazy, but the Holocaust isn't a true story.
All right, yeah, there we go. That's the first Holocaust joke.
Yeah.
The Holocaust did happen, by the way. That is the official position of the Select and Reflect channel.
Yes.
Yeah,
we need to put a disclaimer in the description.
It stars Liam Neeson, Ben Kingsley, Ralph Fiennes, Caroline Goodall, Jonathan Segel, and Embeth Davids. The movie was released on December 15th, 1993. I joked about how we're recording this around Christmas time. It's a festive period. It's a period full of joy and happiness. And I'm watching, Schindler's
This is what we're doing instead of a Christmas movie.
Yes, exactly. Instead of a Christmas movie. But I mean, you think about it, Jesus was a Jew who was persecuted. Yeah, well, this is that on steroids, isn't it? Yeah.
Also, I feel like it does snow a few times in this movie, right? Or is that just the ash?
I mean, it does. It does snow. You are right. Yes. Yeah. The thing is, this was released on December the 15th, 1993. I mean, I don't know why it was released so close to Christmas. Well, I know why. It's because
the Jews wanted to distract from Jesus.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I mean, look, hey, Jewish people, they often go to the theaters in America on Christmas Day. So I imagine, this was very popular in 1993 on Christmas Day, and of course Spielberg did Jurassic Park a few months earlier. So that's why he obviously...
Yeah, it is crazy the movies are so close to each other.
Yeah, so what a great... 1993, what a great year for Spielberg. Jurassic Park, one of the greatest blockbusters of all time. And then, of course, Schindler's List, which is very different. And, of course, we are reviewing it as well because it won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1994. And Spielberg also picked up the Best Director Academy Award, the first time he'd won that award. This is, of course, a significant movie, Michael. I think it's justified that we are reviewing it.
Yes.
Can you tell me what the budget was for Schindler's List?
Oh, I don't know. And I don't really know whether or not Ralph Fiennes or Liam Neeson were massive box office, like, would have cost that much money at this time.
I can tell you, Liam Neeson was selected because he wasn't.
He wasn't, okay. See, that's making me think it can't have been that much, and obviously it was the 90s, so money wasn't worth that much, but I don't want to go too low.
Go on, guess.
I'm going to go for 20 million.
Great guess.
Good.
22 million.
Lovely.
Fine guess. And what about the box office?
Ralph Fiennes' guess.
Yeah, what about the box office, Michael? How much did this make? Have you ever seen the Seinfeld episode that where Seinfeld goes on, well, a bunch of people, including Jerry Seinfeld, go on about Schindler's List? I think, it's his parents keep telling Jerry to watch Schindler's List because it's so important.
This was like Black Panther for black people.
I mean, no, well, Black Panther for Jewish people, you mean?
Yeah. Fuck, 250 million.
You know what?
Maybe you were trying to, okay.
That is a very, it's not a very good guess, but considering how you often go very low, it's honestly for you, it's a good guess because the correct answer is 322 million.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a phenomenon. Of course, Spielberg, it's interesting reading about it. He did not think it was going to be successful. Of course,
what an idiot.
He had just directed, and made Jurassic Park, which was, of course, the movie which was the highest grossing movie of all time. And then he's doing this Schindler's List, which of course it's a movie about the Holocaust. It's in black and white. He didn't think it would. It's 3 hours long. He didn't think it'd have that big an appeal. So he's like, yeah, it'll probably lose money, but I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this because I'm Jewish, etc. Yeah. And it ended up making 322 million, and became maybe his best movie. Of course, it won him his best picture and best director. So anyway, Michael, let us discuss Schindler's List. Did you like it?
Yes, I did. This movie was good. What I think's interesting about this movie is that for me, I mean, maybe this isn't that shocking, the massive thing in this movie's favour is that it's a really solid character arc. I think one of the things, because that's it, I mean, it's called Schindler's List. It's about Oskar Schindler. And I think what's interesting is that the character arc almost seems kind of like very kind of basic in a way, because you could say it's basically just almost the Scrooge character in the so maybe it is appropriate during Christmas because you have Liam Neeson. He's somebody, he only cares about money. He's kind of he's very cynical, and then obviously you see him become somebody who by the end of it clearly really cares about saving life. So that in a way it's a very kind of basic character arc. It's the character arc of like every single dad in a family comedy, like, oh, I only care about money, and then at the end he learns about caring about other people. But I almost think the fact is so simple, but it's so captivating, to me, makes the that kind of character arc really incredible. And for me, that's like the main thing that stands out about this movie. And that's why, like, that alone is why I would say this movie's really good. So it's like my main thing. If you ask me, did I like this movie? But yeah, because that character arc.
Yeah, I think obviously the character arc from Schindler is incredible. One of the best character arcs you're ever going to see in a movie. And I think obviously it's based on a true story. And that I think is what helps it, because I think I read somewhere on Wikipedia that a director did not want to make this movie because he found Schindler's character arc unbelievable. How could you go from helping or not helping Jews, just caring about making as much profit as possible, to becoming the savior of over 1,000 Jews and stopping them from going to Auschwitz? Like, it seems kind of unbelievable. But of course it actually happened in real life. This is a true story. And so for something, it is an incredible story on its own naturally. And to see, so then you have to execute this character arc. Can you do it well? And I think there's some really good scenes with Liam Neeson, of course, as Oskar Schindler, trying to, grappling with what's happening around him, grappling with the situation, and eventually, coming to terms with, there is only one thing I can really do here. There's only one thing that my conscience will let me do. And again, I can imagine this happening in real life. I can imagine if what happened to the real Oskar Schindler was very similar to this, and that's what makes the character arc great, because it is realistic.
There was like an interesting, like, one of the moments that stuck out to me about that, and this is jumping ahead, but it's only a small point anyway, is when he's like says, oh, I don't want this factory to actually work in terms of making weapons and stuff.
Yes.
And I thought, oh, that's a bit silly, right? Like, obviously it's making it sympathetic that he was like so against the Nazis that he was actively sabotaging the war effort. But I was like, oh, that's just, they're clearly adding that so that he'll be more sympathetic to obviously a kind of Western liberal audience. But no, that's actually true. He actually did make sure that because I looked it up.
It is an unbelievable story. Yeah. But you still have to execute it well. And of course,
definitely.
Liam Neeson, it does a great job. We'll talk about him. And Steven Spielberg and the writers really do create some great scenes in which we fully see, like, Schindler's, I guess, conscience battling with his what he thinks of himself as a businessman, and of course he has the conversations with Ben Kingsley, who is kind of like his sounding board in some scenes, and yeah, it's really good. And of course, it's more than just a look at Schindler and his character arc. This movie, it is also a look at the Holocaust in general. It doesn't really delve into the most gruesome aspects of that, obviously, but it's still. I mean, there are still a lot of gruesome aspects, to be fair, but there are some other media property. And again, that was one of the criticisms, which we'll look at, like people saying, well, yeah, I mean, it was a kind of it's weird because it is kind of a feel-good movie in some respects because of what this guy managed to do. And I remember going through the IMDb top 250 movies, and Schindler's List was very high up there. And I thought, well, that's a bit weird because I hadn't seen the movie at the time. Because it's a movie about the Holocaust, I knew that, and normally IMDb uses like feel-good movies like The Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
And how can a movie about the Holocaust be feel-good? But it kind of is because of this incredible story of him saving all these Jewish people. So yeah, it doesn't get as dark as it could potentially. Yeah, but it still does get dark in some ways. And of course, Ralph Fiennes playing the Nazi. Eamon Goth. That's a great representation of the evil of the Nazis, which of course we'll get into. So yeah, it's not just a look at Schindler, it's also a look at some of the horrors that took place in the 1940s to the Jewish people. So yeah, and that I think Spielberg had to kind of include that as well, because it would feel you can't just make this movie and not show the evil of the Nazis. There are scenes that take place which just have nothing to do with Oskar Schindler, and I think you have to have that in if you're going to make this kind of movie. So yeah, I think that's it. Do we have any nitpicks, Michael?
I kind of got one. I don't even know if this is really a nitpick.
Yeah, I've got one as well.
It's more like an observation that I would be interested to hear like your thoughts on, in a way, which is the kind of inconsistency with language and accent. I just find it interesting that you kind of got like some characters just speak in English accents, like, or I can't really think of what accent Liam Neeson does, whether it's like an Irish accent, but
it's not meant to be Irish.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a German accent though. Like he's not doing like a German accent.
No, I think he's doing the best he can do.
Oh, maybe really, okay. Because I was going to say like, but then obviously you also have characters who are actually speaking German. So yeah, okay, maybe it is literally just that he's like not very good at doing accents. Because,
well, it's the same with Ralph Fiennes. I mean, he has a kind of a weird voice because he's English. And you can tell, like, I've heard Ralph Fiennes and Liam Neeson speak in other movies. You can tell, like, it's their voice, but just with the German slant to it. But yeah, obviously the extras and stuff, Spielberg hired, like, Germans and Poles and so on. And so, yeah, they spoke their native tongue. So anyway, let's get on to the movie. Of course, Schindler's List follows Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist who saved more than 1,000 mostly Polish Jewish refugees from the Holocaust by employing them in his factories during World War II. And of course, we talked about the character arc he goes on and everything. And yeah, it's that's what it is. We see the horrors of the Holocaust at the same time, well, not at the same time, or sometimes at the same time, to be fair. And then we also see Oskar Schindler go on this journey. It just follows like what happened in history.
Yeah, that's it basically. It's a like I say, character arc kind of put across. Like, and that's almost like the funny thing about it. It's almost like in a way. The Holocaust, this is going to sound like a really, really weird thing to say, but it's almost like it's incidental in that the movie's not about the Holocaust so much, it's about how does this individual man react to a tragedy that's happening around him.
It's kind of both though. That's the thing.
Yeah, I guess
it's like I was saying before, like I think Spielberg had to make it kind of both because you have these scenes where it's like a documentary. He has a bunch of facts about how many Jews were killed, or the liberation of the Krakow ghetto happened on this date, and of course it's it's kind of like a documentary. Like you don't get many drama movies with just a bunch of facts coming up.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, he's kind of I think Spielberg felt he had to include a lot of scenes regarding how the Jews were treated and had to tell the story about what actually happened and tried to make it historically accurate. That was one of his motivations, along with showing Schindler's character arc. I want to point this out from Wikipedia. This guy, Robert Galately, notes the film in its entirety, or Galatelli, sorry. The film in its entirety can be seen as a metaphor for the Holocaust, with early sporadic violence increasing into a crescendo of death and destruction, And I read that and I was like, well, yeah, because it's not a metaphor for the Holocaust.
No, yeah, I was going to say that's what happened.
That's what happened. The film is following history, you know.
Yeah.
So
that is a bit weird.
Yeah, it's like
if someone made a movie about like the fall of Rome, and someone was like, "This is really metaphorical to the fall of Rome." It's like, no.
Guess what? Yeah, they didn't start murdering the Jewish people right away. Of course, it was called the final solution for a reason.
Yeah,
it was the final thing that they thought of. Let's murder them all. Yeah, and obviously it's not just about Schindler. You know, I think we can see this this documentary style almost, I think, clashing with like the Schindler character arc, because there's one point where, if you remember, the Nazis are burning the bodies of Jews who were murdered, and you know if that's a scene depicting look how. There's just a lack of humanity, you know, obviously no care for a burial or whatever. You know, Jews were digging other Jews' graves who had died. You know, there's just, these people don't mean anything to the Nazis, you know, they treat them like vermin or whatever. And for some reason, like, so obviously Eamon Goth is there, like, overseeing it all. And for some reason, like, Oskar Schindler's there as well, just standing there watching the bodies being burned. I'm like, well, why is he there? I don't know why he's there.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Like, sometimes, yeah, I'm with you on that.
I think that was the most obvious case of, like, the clash between making this about, you know, the Nazis and what they were doing to the Jews, and making this about Oskar Schindler. You know, that's it. Doesn't really. I thought that while I was watching that, it's like, why is he there? Like in a random field, like you know, he's not like he's visiting Goth in his home, which is of course right next to the camp. Anyway, according to scriptwriter Frederick Raphael, when he suggested, this is a criticism I think of this movie, kind of. You could view it as that, I guess. So Stanley Kubrick, you know, he was going to make a Holocaust movie.
Yeah.
It was a movie about two Jews escaping or traveling across Poland or Germany or whatever, and posing as Catholics. And it was called Aryan Papers. But he stopped making that he decided not to pursue it after Schindler's List came out. Yeah, but basically he said he was asked, you know, about, you know, Schindler's List, and the interviewer said it was a good representation of the Holocaust, and Kubrick commented, "Think that's about the Holocaust? That was about success, wasn't it? The Holocaust is about 6 million people who get killed. Schindler's List is about 600 who don't." And the thing is, of course, this movie is about Schindler's List, like it's a real story that happened. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a criticism of Spielberg, but we keep saying, of course, the movie is kind of about the Holocaust. But again, there's like one scene at Auschwitz, isn't there?
Yeah.
And of course, Auschwitz is the infamous camp. That is the
and also there's one scene at Auschwitz where they don't get gassed.
Exactly, they don't get gassed, and they get rescued from Auschwitz. That's what happens, and that's the thing. If you really wanted to make a good representation of the Holocaust, you would have to make a lot. There are some distressing scenes in this movie, of course, but you would have to go even further. I can appreciate the difficulty that Spielberg had creating this movie.
Yeah,
because it's like, well, I want to make this, you know, movie about this inspirational guy, Oskar Schindler. What a great thing he did. What a great sacrifice he made, you know, saving all these Jewish lives. But at the same time, I do want to show like the horrors of the Holocaust, but like, those are two different kind of, I guess, storylines in the movie. Of course, they interact, and one informs the other. Of course, there's no doubt about that. You know, they're not separate. You know, so I think that's why Spielberg kind of held back. And, you know, it's fine that he did that. It doesn't make the movie worse. I don't know. What were your thoughts on that?
No, I think I do agree. I mean, it's one of those interesting things, because I do like a good feel-good movie, which is why I love Green Book so much. Even though some might say that, you know, the story of segregation is not about the one guy who had his Italian-American driver stand up for him. It's about all the black people who didn't. But no, I think, like, there is an aspect of... I don't blame anyone, and this is kind of touching on what you said, for not wanting to make an accurate Holocaust movie, because obviously, if you wanted to make a movie that would kind of properly represent the Holocaust, it would have to be a very unconventional movie that's basically like kind of an art house, just representation of pure misery and death and blah blah blah. Like, you couldn't, I don't think, really make a good movie with a conventional narrative structure that would accurately represent the Holocaust, because again, it's that problem of there's an inherent disconnect between trying to tell a personal story and dealing with the sheer scale of death. You know, people need to be making conventional movies. So like, that's what I'd say. I'd say like, there's certainly a place for somebody to make a just horrible, borderline unwatchable, miserable movie that just fully communicates how horrible the Holocaust was. And if someone made that, then, I might watch that movie and be like, wow, that was really emotionally resonant, and I, never want to watch that again, but what a powerful movie. But I don't think you can say, like, that a movie like this is therefore illegitimate.
There was a movie that came out in 1956. I can't remember what it's called, but it's maybe a very good representation of that. And then there was this documentary that came out in 85 called Shoah, it's like 9 hours long. And
I feel like I've heard about that movie. But...
yeah, it's a really detailed account of all the stuff that went down in the Holocaust. I imagine.
I was also thinking, like, and this could have been a nitpick, but like the fact that when you see kind of the Jews marching off at the end, I was thinking, like, they do not look like emaciated. Which I mean, no, actually, maybe it does make sense. No, because Schindler, I think, probably treated them better. Actually, so that's a stupid point. Yeah,
they only would be emaciated probably in Auschwitz.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. That's fine. I kind of think about that.
While they were working in the camps, they would obviously they're performing slave labor, like the Platschau camp or whatever it's called. It's not a death camp.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference. So you want to keep your slave labor, decently fed, so they can perform their duties.
By the way, I think the 1956 film you're thinking about is called Nuit et Brouillard, which is a French documentary film about the Holocaust. I just looked up 1956 Holocaust movie, and it's the first that came up.
Interesting. Yeah, so that's the thing. Just to sum up on this whole, it's not a really accurate representation of the Holocaust because, more Jews survive than die in this movie, at least the Jews that we see. The thing is, yes, it is about the ones that survive, but that is a true story. It's perfectly fine to create a movie about that. And the thing is, of course, at the same time, Spielberg is trying to show, how horrible the experience was. But he doesn't want to go too far because otherwise, the tone would clash too much then. I think overall, like, it's a tricky it's a tricky thing to balance. It's a tricky path to travel down. And I think he does it overall quite well. I think it's quite a good. Not just in tone, but in execution as well. Those two things he has to take that into account. And I think he does it rather well, honestly. Like, it's as good as you could probably do it. It's very tricky. It's a very tricky thing to pull off, and of course, I think he does it very well. So let's get into the development of this movie, Michael. So Pollock Plethenberg, one of the Schindler Juden, that's Schindler's Jews, by the way.
Yes.
Made it his life's mission to tell the story of his saviour. So in 1982, Thomas Keneally published his historical novel Schindler's Ark, which he wrote after a chance meeting with Pfefferberg. MCA president Sid Sheinberg sent director Spielberg a New York Times review of the book, and Spielberg, astounded by Schindler's story, jokingly asked if it was true. Again, it's kind of unbelievable. Yeah. And he said, "I was drawn to it because of the paradoxical nature of the character," he said. "What would drive a man like this to suddenly take everything he'd earned and put it all in the service of saving these lives?" Again, if it didn't happen, you'd think it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, if something like this didn't happen and this movie was created, you would say it's grossly offensive, honestly.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Like a movie about like a factory worker who just decides to suddenly help, factory owner.
Yeah, a German factory owner who decides to help the Jewish people. It's like, well, no, that didn't go down at all like that. It's ridiculous to assume something like this would happen, but it did actually happen, which is why the story's so amazing. Spielberg was unsure if he was mature enough to make a film about the Holocaust, because just a few years ago, what movie did he make, Michael?
Oh, crap.
Indiana Jones movie.
Oh, really? Oh, was it the last one? The Last Crusade?
Yeah, and what did that feature?
Nazis.
Yeah, and they were the bad guys.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. I completely blanked on like Spielberg's. For a minute, like in my head, I was thinking about because Spielberg did The Empire of the Rising Sun, right? Whatever it was called, the movie about Japan. So that's what I thought you were going to mention. But no, yeah.
So the movie remained on his guilty conscience, and he tried to pat it off to Roman Polanski, but he refused Spielberg's offer. So Polanski's mother was killed at Auschwitz. Yeah. And he had lived in and survived the Krakow ghetto.
Well, Polanski made The Pianist, didn't he?
Yes, I was going to mention that. Obviously, he made The Pianist in 2002 about the ghetto. Spielberg also offered the films to Sidney Pollack and Martin Scorsese. However, Spielberg was unsure of letting Scorsese direct the film, as "I'd given away a chance to do something for my children and family about the Holocaust." Scorsese would later say, while he believed his version of the film might have been good, he had no regrets passing it to Spielberg, stating, "It would not have been the hit that it became." Yeah, and I think that's true. Spielberg finally decided to take on the project when he noticed that Holocaust deniers were being given serious consideration by the media. Well, God, imagine if that was happening in the early 90s, imagine nowadays. Yeah.
Kanye West created Schindler's List.
Yeah. Well, how about Mr. Elon Musk, Michael?
Yeah, I saw some crazy statistic about like the number of people who doubt the Holocaust. It was crazy. I can't remember what it was, but it was a significant number. But I feel like it could be one of those things where they got like a really small sample size and they left out that it was a Nazi convention.
Yeah. With the rise of neo-Nazism after the fall of the Berlin Wall, he worried that people were too accepting of intolerance as they were in the 30s. Sid Sheinberg greenlit the film on condition Spielberg made Jurassic Park first. Spielberg later said, he knew that once I had directed Schindler, I wouldn't be able to do Jurassic Park, which is...
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. It's like Jurassic Park's a very, fun movie about a disaster, of course, that happens in the park, but generally it's a fun adventure kind of movie with, obviously, it's, dinosaurs and everything in this.
Yeah. The problem is, your Nazis were so bothered thinking about whether or not they could, they didn't think whether or not they should.
No, I think they did think about whether they should, and they thought, yes, we should. The picture was assigned a budget of $22 million, as Holocaust films are not usually profitable. Spielberg, but this is Steven Spielberg, he's the magic man. He forewent a salary for the film, calling it blood money, and believed it would fail. Well, it didn't, of course.
Yeah, idiot. What do Jews know about money?
Actually, there's some talk about Jews and money in terms of the criticism of this movie, which we'll get to, of course, in a bit. So let's talk about candles, Michael. Well, let's talk about the start of the movie, because what is the first shot of the movie?
Oh, it's someone lighting a candle. I can't really remember if we find out the context. I might have just forgotten it.
So the opening scene features a family observing Shabbat. Spielberg said that to start the film with the candles being lit would be a rich bookend, to start the film with a normal Shabbat service before the juggernaut against the Jews begins. When the colour fades out in the film's opening moments, it gives way to a world in which smoke comes to symbolise bodies being burned at Auschwitz. Only at the end, when Schindler allows his workers to hold Shabbat services, do the images of candlefire regain their warmth through colour. For Spielberg, they represented just a glint of colour and a glimmer of hope. Sarah Horowitz, director at the Koshitsky Center for Jewish Studies at York University, sees the candles as a symbol for the Jews of Europe killed and then burnt in the crematoria. The two scenes bracket the Nazi era, marking its beginning and end. So, let's go on to Oskar Schindler. He is a German Nazi party member from Czechoslovakia who arrives in the city hoping to make his fortune. He bribes Wehrmacht and SS officials, acquiring a factory to produce enamelware. And of course, this movie, like we said, is all about his character arc. You see him schmoozing with the Nazis, just doing, all this business stuff. And then he hires Isaac Stern, a Jewish official with contacts among black marketeers and the Jewish business community. He handles administration and helps Schindler with financing. So again, it's a great character arc, because this guy starts off like he seems a bit evil. Schindler, like he seems, just like any businessman who, sees this opportunity in front of him. To take advantage of a situation, and therefore he takes advantage of the Nazi corruption. He's taking advantage of these Jews at first, or I guess the war situation in general, and he only wants to make money. And why does he employ Jews, Michael?
Because they're cheaper.
Yeah, so and that's his motivation, and so that's a great start, isn't it?
Do you think that they do a good job of making him like not goofy? Because obviously I made the analogy that this is like in your standard like family comedy, like the dad's like obsessed with money. I think like it's because one of the things I said is that this movie has a very basic plot.
I don't know why you're comparing it to a family comedy.
I think, well, it's just like, it's like the idea of like, it's somebody goes from only caring about money to having a genuine heart. Like I'm thinking about like the dad in Mary Poppins, who's like a banker who's like, I only care about money, and then by the end he's like, oh no, I love singing and dancing. And
that's a kids movie. Okay. You wouldn't expect. I would not expect that in this kind of movie, but which isn't a kids movie.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is like, so I feel like it's like that's the basic character arc he has in this movie, but I think like they do it in a way where what I like about it is at the beginning he's presented as kind of cynical, but you don't dislike him. In fact, one of the things I wrote, and this applies throughout the film, but I wanted to use it because this is a little bit of a callback. I wrote, Oskar Schindler has so much riz. Now you told me what riz means the other day, Luke, didn't you?
Yeah.
It means charisma. And like what I was thinking is like they have this guy who he's just really cool in a way. Like he like makes friends of everyone, and like they obviously established that quite early on with him like making friends with the Nazis, buying them drinks. And I think that like really works because it's kind of like they don't have him be like a kind of Scrooge character who's just like angry. There are like scenes where he kind of gets angry, but he's not just like miserable, like I only care about money. He's more just like a kind of cool dude who's just out for himself. And I think
that's a representation of who he was.
Yeah, the real thing. Yeah, but like I think it works in terms of like no,
you're right. It is better.
Yeah.
No, I get what you mean, because he could have been just kind of miserable. But again, according to history, he was like this schmoozer. Yeah, and so you can say, okay, he's not like his personality is not dislikable, but his actions very much are something that you would dislike, I think.
Yeah.
He's just taking advantage of the situation, doesn't give a damn. There is this great scene showing probably, I think, Schindler's lack of morals that he has at the start of the movie, where he takes this Jew's house,
Yes.
So this Jew is being moved, or this Jewish family, it's a husband and wife who are, wealthy, then being moved to this ghetto in Krakow, obviously. And then, we see them moving into their new, room, which is, very crowded. It's got 12 people living in it or something. And then Schindler's just sitting on this nice big bed in this nice, lovely house. He's just taking this house.
Yeah, so that's probably the moment where he's almost at his most unlikable, which I think is obviously good to establish that he does have that.
That's what I think. He's a pretty unlikable character overall, even though he's got a charming personality.
Yeah, that's it. It's he's very I think cynical is a good word for it, and a lot of the nice stuff, quote unquote nice stuff, is a facade. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, we know this type of guy, this type of character. And it's portrayed very well in this movie. Also, we have to mention there is another, I think, modern example of some people taking some other people's houses, and that involving Jewish people.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. Well, just very.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, well, it's really funny, how much the beginning of this movie, especially that line about someone just moved into our house, and I think they literally say the line we show up and someone tells us they own our house now. It's really hard not to watch it with the recent events happening. This is exactly what's happening in Palestine.
Specifically, that's what's happening in the West Bank.
Yes.
Obviously, in Gaza, they haven't tried to do that, have Israel?
Yeah, well, for some reason they don't want to live in the houses because all the houses are rubble.
Yeah, so, yes. They won't be moving into those houses anytime soon, I think. But obviously, that's the thing. What's going on right now in Israel and Palestine? You look at these world events, and then then you watch this movie and you're like, oh yeah. I mean, you hear stories, of course, of Israeli soldiers just casually just murdering Palestinians in Gaza, and it's like, oh yeah, maybe there are some parallels to what the Nazis are doing to the Jews in this movie.
I was thinking that the way you just have the fact that because that's kind of the interesting thing. You mentioned, and this is kind of going back, but actually it's quite an interesting point. The fact that it doesn't show the industrialized genocide where they were just put into gas chambers and killed kind of almost as efficiently and inhumanely as not inhumanely but inhumane with no regard for their humanity is what I'm saying, exactly. As possible. But in this it's kind of you don't really see that because obviously it's a work camp, but it's the fact that their lives are literally just viewed as less than nothing, they just casually get killed and no one cares about it.
It's really hard, I think, for people who have a conscience to see what is happening in Gaza, and think how are people allowing this to happen, and how are people allowing this to happen, how are Israel doing this, how radicalized are they? And then you see this movie, and I guess ironically or not, I don't think that word is really necessary. You can see how easy it is for some people to commit these heinous acts against another race or religion of people, because they just don't see them as human. They just see who cares if I kill these people? They're not human to me. And that's what's going on, in Gaza right now. Yeah, and it's what happened in this movie. So I don't know. I don't think the word irony is necessary, but you can look at this movie, and as is the case with probably any ethnic cleansing or genocide that's ever occurred, it really helps. And this is we'll get onto it later, of course, but since we're on the topic, we'll talk about this now. It really helps to explain how this could happen. How could the Nazis commit such acts of heinous violence? Well, the simple explanation is, these people are nothing to them. So Liam Neeson now, Michael. Steven Spielberg offered Neeson the role of Oscar Schindler in his Holocaust film Schindler's List. Why the fuck am I doing this? Is everyone just fucking
just introducing it for the first time. Have you heard of this movie Schindler's List, Michael?
Yeah, I copied this from Wikipedia, and I should have got that out. So he saw him on Anna Christie on Broadway. Kevin Costner, Mel Gibson, and Warren Beatty all expressed interest, but Spielberg wanted to cast an unknown, so the actor's star quality would not overpower the character. And of course, Liam Neeson then went on to become a very famous actor. Neeson read the Keneally book and concluded that his character, I'll do this in an Irish accent, enjoyed fucking with the Nazis. In Keneally's book, it says he was regarded as a kind of buffoon by them. If the Nazis were New Yorkers, he was from Arkansas. They didn't take him quite seriously, and he used that to full effect. That's the thing. That's the case in Keneally's book. In the movie, I don't really think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't think the Nazis view him as like this buffoon.
No, yeah. It's actually, I mean, obviously, like the way he's viewed in this movie, he's like very sly, and it is actually interesting, like the few moments where, like you get the impression that he lets the mask slip, and obviously I'm talking about as it like becomes apparent. Like the obvious example, I know this is jumping ahead, but like with the hose scene, where like you're like, okay, Oscar, come on, you gotta keep it subtle. You don't want these Nazis actually thinking that you like the Jews. But no, yeah, it seems like I mean, the main Nazi in this is Eamon Roth. Eamon Roth? No, Eamon Goth, that's his name.
There's this scene where Eamon Goth says to Schindler, you're always in control.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like he seems like, Eamon Goth almost seems like a weird, and I don't know when we're going to talk about this because we have to talk about Eamon Goth because he's such an interesting character, but he seems like a weird like Schindler fanboy at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's easy to be a fanboy of Schindler because he does always seem control. He's always dressed very nicely. Liam Neeson is not like an ugly like buffoon. You look at him and, he's tall, he's imposing, he looks, the character in general gives off the vibe of someone who is competent and in control and commanding. And according to Neeson, in the actual Oscar Schindler was a bit of a buffoon. So it's like, or to the Nazis at least. So therefore, I think how he's portrayed in this movie is not actually accurate in terms of how he got away with this. He got away with this because he was like, oh, this guy's Oscar Schindler, he's respected, and maybe in real life it was a case of, well, how is Oscar Schindler getting away with this? Well, that's just Oscar Schindler.
The real twist is that Oscar Schindler was actually 100% committed Nazi. He was just really bad at it. He just kept accidentally saving the Jews' life.
Well, maybe that's what the Nazis kind of thought. Like, I think this bumbling moron, whatever, he's not trying to pull over the wool over our eyes and is secretly, trying to save these Jews. That's impossible. And in this movie, it takes a different direction. It's like he could save these Jews because he was, so imposing and respected. So nobody wanted to go against him. Anyway, criticism of the film also appeared, mostly from academia. Horowitz pointed out that much of the Jewish activity in the ghetto consists of financial transactions. This is what I was talking about with Jews and money.
Yeah, I was thinking that like it doesn't like the way they like go to the Catholic Church and they're like trading in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, so lending money, trading on the black market, hiding wealth, and perpetuating a stereotypical view of Jewish life. I mean, I think that was just the reality of being in the ghetto.
Yeah, I always feel like there's a sense in which if you're in a situation like that, because obviously we all know like the main reason why Jews had to get into like money lending and stuff like that is because that was the only job they were allowed to do. So I feel like if, like the fact they're doing that stuff and they had to do that stuff because, that was the only option available for them, means that the only thing they can really do that's dignified is kind of just own that.
Well, forget the historical reasons for the stereotype. You don't even know, like, what's the most dignified way to portray them. It's like, no, it's like
it's just the reality.
This is what they were doing in the ghettos because, there wasn't a lot of, I guess, food or, provisions. There wasn't anything. So, okay, you need to trade then on the black market. You need to do these, these deals. That's what happens. So, Stern ensures that as many Jewish workers as possible are deemed essential to the German war effort to prevent them from being taken to concentration camps or killed. And so, it's an interesting look at things again. This is why I think history movies are good in general because, you're learning and you're having fun. Well, maybe not having fun. But it's interesting to see, Stern, this guy is saying to this, I think he's an art and literature teacher. He's like, oh yeah,
yeah. It's like, oh, you forgot your wait, is this the right bit where he like pretends that he has a different paper from what he does?
Yes, you are a metal worker. That is what you are. He forgot he was a metal worker. Here you go. Here's his papers saving him. So very good stuff there.
From, I like that too.
Yeah. Just showing the reality of the situation, what people had to do to save themselves. Again, we have a great scene with, of course, Stern. He accidentally forgets his papers, and Schindler has to rescue him from a train taking him to a concentration camp. And yes, Schindler's actions, of course, at this stage aren't motivated by anything other than self-interest, are they?
No, yeah.
Yeah, he says, it's a great line from Schindler after he saves Stern. He says, "Where would that leave me, if you were on that train?" Yeah, not for one like second seemingly concerned about him. So again, I really like that scene because it's a dramatic scene. It of course shows how you just forget your papers one day. That's it. You're on a train.
Yeah, I mean, and you also have the and it's kind of the arbitrariness, like which obviously is something I kind of touched on already, like the fact it's just viewed with impunity, like you just don't know what's going to happen. You also have that scene of obviously the old man who like the old man with one arm, which I guess we kind of. Like that's also a good scene, but I'm just thinking about when he gets shot and Schindler's like, I lost a worker. Like, expect to be compensated.
Yeah. Again, that's what he's I mean, that's what he's thinking. Like, that he says that line later on in the movie, of course, to those SS guards. It's like, if you shoot my workers, I will be compensated, so don't shoot them.
Yeah.
And that when he says that later on in the movie, like, his motivation for saying that is he wants to protect them.
Yeah.
I feel like when he's saying it to this Nazi guy, you know, it's
because he genuinely, like, that's his attitude.
He's like, I have this worker, now I have to train another one. Like, stop shooting my fucking workers, you're costing me money. Like, he genuinely has that motivation. So again, SS Untersturmführer Eamon Goth arrives in Krakow to oversee construction of the Platschau concentration camp. When the camp is ready, he orders the ghetto liquidated. 2,000 Jews are transported to Platschau, and 2,000 others are killed in the streets by the SS. We see Ralph Fiennes obviously being the best evil Nazi ever.
Yeah. Do you think it was kind of reckless for them to cast a guy who's kind of good looking?
Well,
or do you think it was okay because they made him look sort of fat?
He's kind of fat, but of course the thing is he's a bit of a psychopath.
Yes.
And I think for that to be the case, you need someone who is kind of good looking. I think that works a lot better for the role that because that's the thing, he's a psychopath, and he's just like, he doesn't delight in the cruelty, you know, of running this camp. You know, he's not like evil like that.
No, yeah, he just doesn't care.
He's just evil in the fact that he's just, you know, he views Jews as so far beneath him that he doesn't get any joy out of being cruel to them. You know, that's a level of evil which is so evil. It's like, I don't like you're killing a fucking bug in your house that's annoying you. You know, swatting a fly. Like, Jesus, get the fuck out of here, man. Like, you know how flies can be really annoying?
Yeah, we have a mouse in our house, but we didn't kill it. We got a humane mouse trap.
Well, that's a bit different, obviously. But yeah, I'm so, like, just a bug. Like, just get out of here. And that's how, you know, he has dehumanized them so much that he doesn't even take any joy in killing them and murdering them. You know, he's just a complete psychopath. And for that, and if you want to create that character, you kind of need him to be, I think, a bit, you know, not flat and, you know, slovenly or whatever. You don't want to cast an actor like that. You want to cast an actor kind of like Ralph Fiennes. Yeah,
and I think like, you know, definitely one of the kind of best villain portrayals in terms of being interesting, and obviously like the whole psychopath thing. I think like that. You know, like people obviously talk about like great villains like Anton Chigurh in No Country for Old Men. Like these pure psychopaths are often very interesting to kind of play and see, kind of like get a vision of what makes them tick, because whatever makes them tick is so beyond like kind of normal functioning. And like I think that is presented very well. And I think you did actually do a really good explanation of it there with like he's basically just kind of bored.
Yes.
And I felt like they almost portrayed him almost like a child at one point, where because he's like when he like is talking to what's it called, Liam Neeson. And he just gets told like this whole like, hey, you know, sometimes it can actually be powerful to be merciful. And he like tries it, and it's just like, it seems like he's just trying to like it's just not processing in his head, and then he's just confused. So then he just shoots someone. And
that's why again you need this younger.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Apparently, I looked like he died at 37.
Yeah.
Like the actual, you know, Ralph Fiennes.
So yeah, I think, you know, it makes sense. Of course, it was accurate. Apparently, one of the Jewish Holocaust survivors saw Ralph Fiennes in his Nazi uniform and thought
and tried to kill him.
She trembled in fear because he looked so much like Eamon Goth. So a great casting. So yeah, I think you can say, maybe is he that? Should he be that good looking? Well, I think it works for the character. You know, but if they didn't, regardless of that, it seemed to be accurate. So and of course the great scene. Well, not, you know, when I say great, I mean showing the evil depicted, where of course he just kills that Jewish engineer. He's like, oh well, shoot her. You know, just shoot her. We can't have her. And even the other Nazis like, well, what? She's the foreman. Why would we do that? Yeah. Well, you know, it doesn't matter if she's the foreman. She's a Jew. Like that's that's his attitude. Yeah. And then when he's, you know, just picking off random Jews with his sniper, I have to believe that's something that happened in real life. Yeah. Because if it didn't, that's just unbelievable. And it's just so it's so believable. It's got to be true. Sorry, so unbelievable. It's got to be true. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that again is a great scene depicting his evil. So Schindler witnesses the massacre and is profoundly affected. He notices a young girl in a red coat who hides from the Nazis and later sees her body on a wagon load of corpses. I guess this is, you know, how someone would go on a character arc like Schindler does. You know, you would have to have a life-altering experience. That has to happen. And he is looking down at the horror beneath him, isn't he? Yeah. And seeing all that, I do wonder if there's a comparison with Goth looking down at the Jews and, you know, sniping them in that scene we just talked about, and Schindler looking
Yeah,
down.
yeah, that's a good parallel.
Yeah, looking down, and maybe he's like, because he's on a horse, he's like, a savior, kind of. That's maybe why Spielberg had him on a horse. I'm not sure, but I do think that it's very interesting, those scenes kind of almost back to back. So let's talk about the girl in red, Michael, because there's some symbolism with the girl in red.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, the only character who's in color. I mean, I don't really know the details of the symbolism, but I'm not surprised there is something going on.
So, of course, the film is shot primarily in black and white, and it's shot, by the way, in black and white, but because Spielberg wanted to approach the film as a documentary. We've discussed that was kind of what he was trying to do. We can see it. And, to Spielberg, the black and white presentation of the film came to represent the Holocaust itself. So, the Holocaust without light. For me, the symbol of life is colour. That's why a film about the Holocaust has to be in black and white. And, of course, therefore, why is this girl in red? Well, because the girl in red, and yes, Spielberg said the scene was intended to symbolise how members of the highest levels of government in the United States knew the Holocaust was occurring, yet did nothing to stop it. He said it was as obvious as a little girl wearing a red coat walking down the street, and yet nothing was done to bomb the German rail lines. Nothing was being done to slow down the annihilation of European Jewry. So that was my message in letting that scene be in colour.
I guess the red color specifically, like red's a very evocative color. And also, I mean, for example, if it was blue, that wouldn't really stand out against the gray. So I think like that specific color, but of course, there's blood, there's urgency.
Yes.
Red is also in the Nazi color, like quite common. So yeah, I think red was a good choice. And that makes sense.
Well, I was just going to expand on what you said, because basically Professor André H. Caron of the University of Montreal wonders if the red symbolises innocence, hope, or the red blood of the Jewish people being sacrificed in the horror of the Holocaust. So Schindler is careful to maintain his friendship with Goth and continues to enjoy SS support, mostly through bribery. I like how he is saying, it's bad for business, because it's true. When the Germans keep killing his workers, and or the Nazis to be specific. And I think the stupidity and the cruelty of fascism is on display in this movie. Like they had Jews working for them instead of just committing a genocide against them. I think that you see how like poorly they're treated. It's like they could have really helped with this war effort and still been like slaves.
No, yeah, like they were just
But it's the fact about fascism. It's like they go so far, that this is always likely to happen. They can keep as many records as they want and be as efficient as possible. But what will let them down, which is of course what fucked the Nazis in World War II, was that they believed that they were so superior, or that their enemies were weaker than them, or they hated their enemies so much, essentially. And that goes for the Jews and and also the communists in the Soviet Union. They hated them so much that they, in terms of just winning the war effort, they did stupid things.
No, yeah. Like, and also, I mean, isn't it crazy that they just gave their soldiers drugs? But the other thing I was thinking about is like on terms of stupidity. And it is kind of interesting that this didn't happen, but I was thinking like, logically, if you wanted to make a kind of group do as they're told, you would kind of treat them well if they kind of behave themselves, but if they, step out of line, then you would like kill them or whatever. And it's kind of like, obviously, what Eamon is doing within that context is like logically stupid as well.
Yeah.
Like, and of course, like that's kind of the funny thing in a way. Like Schindler, he would have made a better Nazi in that, like, actually the Jews wanted to work for him. So
obviously, like that's the thing. But Schindler, of course, doesn't have this hatred of Jews.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it turns out not hating Jews. I remember I like watched a video called like basically how there's no way the Nazis could have won World War II. And at one point, one of the things he's saying is like the problem with this scenario is that you automatically. I think he's talking about like why didn't Germany go down like the nuclear kind of war strategy and he's basically saying because they kicked out all the Jewish scientists. So he's like, so in order for this strategy to work, you would have to make the Nazis tolerant of Jews.
Yeah, there's a line in Oppenheimer where Oppenheimer says we can beat the Nazis to making a nuclear bomb because of anti-Semitism, because Hitler said that all this stuff about fusion and nuclear energy, that was
he said it was like Jewish science.
Yeah, it was Jewish science. So again, like their flaw is the case with every fascist society, is they hate things so much that they're just blinded by this rage, this hatred, and they can't make good decisions, efficient decisions, logical decisions. And that, again, treating the Jews like they did, or indeed invading the Soviet Union because they believe that communists are so weak and pathetic because they hate them so much. Yeah. So as time passes, Schindler's focus shifts from making money to trying to save as many lives as possible. Yeah, and I think he has realistic outbursts, and this is one of the best scenes in the movie where he is trying to justify to himself, or Stern at least, when obviously they're in that room and Stern's, doing some accounting or whatever, and Schindler walks in and he's trying to justify to him or Stern that, things aren't that bad. He thinks he's trying to, say to himself that, he's dealing with reasonable people. This is just a business. He is just a businessman. Like, Eamon Goth has a lot of things to consider. Like, war brings out the worst in people, etc. And of course, his conscience is like screaming at him to do something. But he has to accept he just isn't a businessman, or he shouldn't just be a businessman. And that is the key scene, because of course Stern then tells the story of like Eamon Goth just randomly killing like I think it was 25 Jews. In his camp, just for randomly, for no reason. And then Schindler's like, oh yeah, like, I guess this is not just a normal business. These are not just normal people or reasonable people. These are evil people, and I have to do something about it. And that is another good way. So he's having this character arc, and you need this scene, you need this moment to get him further along his character arc, and that is a really good scene to get him further along. You understand what I'm saying?
No, yeah, absolutely. And I do think it is good, those moments where he tries to rationalize it. Because again, it works in terms of like having a character arc. It does make me like, it makes me realize like often you'll get like movies that try to have like character arcs, and you realize like you actually do need like a movie where it's the center in order to do it well. And obviously, so it's a good thing they kind of kept the focus on that, because it allows them to have these opportunities to really see, like these well-acted moments where, like, no, yeah, he's trying to think it through, it never comes across as kind of like hackneyed. Like they're just like, well, you've got to have a scene like this. It always comes across very authentic.
Yeah, he's trying to justify to himself. Oh, he's battling with his conscience. He's trying to justify to himself that, yes, okay, I know he's running this camp, but someone has to run the camp, and he's under a lot of stress. And then Stern hits him with the, he's just murdering Jews in cold blood. He's like, no, he's you can't rationalize this. You can't be okay with the situation you're in if you do have a conscience. And so that is a very key scene, and it's done very well. And he of course is scared of his reputation of being too helpful to Jewish people. But he still goes forward with obviously providing this haven, and this so-called haven, and of course tries to manipulate Goth as well by making him merciful. That's what true power is. But Goth is so much of a psychopath, so much of a child, so evil that he can't understand that, because he is just a completely just despicable human being. Like so he can never so that's the thing, that scene where he shoots that kid who didn't clean his bath properly. He's like, yes, I'm being merciful. This feels good. Then he sees a speck of dirt and he shoots the kid.
I love it. It's like he's an alien.
That is, I think, a good representation again of a particular element of fascism. That Goth represents, and you can very easily see in that scene where he snipes that kid. It's like, yes, I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to be, honorable. But at the end, what motivates me, who I am, is just this angry, hate-filled person. So that is who I am, and he can't change that. Let's talk about the distressing scenes in the movie, Michael, because Spielberg...
let's talk about the de-dressing scenes in the movie.
Yeah, that's right. Good. Because Spielberg was one of the many crew members who could not force themselves to watch during the shooting of the scene where aging Jews are forced to run naked while being selected by Nazi doctors to go to Auschwitz. Spielberg commented that he felt more like a reporter than a filmmaker. He would set up scenes and then watch events unfold, almost as though he were witnessing them rather than creating a movie. And again, that's what you kind of get with this, documentary style feel to some of the scenes in the movie. Again, you're just watching what's happening. Oskar Schindler isn't involved, and it's just this is what happened in the Holocaust. It's part of the reason for creating this movie was educating people, and so it's understandable he would feel this way. Several actresses broke down when filming the shower scene, including one who was born in a concentration camp. So that right there is again a scene which do you know the controversy behind it actually, Mike?
No.
So here's the thing. So it's when the Jewish workers they're transported to Brunlitz, but the women are they're taken to Auschwitz by mistake, and
which is, by the way, another thing which I thought would have been made up. Like I was like, oh, they've just added this in to like create like some tension, but like no, it actually happened.
Yes. So Michael Haneke calls Steven Spielberg unspeakable because of that scene, by the way, in Schindler's List, because he said that basically, given the extremity of human depravity, in his view, it's not something that should have been met with cinematic tropes. Basically, he said the idea of trying to draw or create suspense out of the question whether out of the shower head gas is going to come or water, to me, is unspeakable.
I kind of see what you're saying. So it's kind of like with there's almost a certain gimmickiness to like, oh, you know, what's going to happen? Is it gonna? Yeah, I don't know.
I'm fine with that. I don't think it is a gimmick, because the question I asked myself: would those women in that situation? I imagine they've heard the stories of people being gassed in showers. I imagine they would have had knowledge of that. Would those women be thinking, when those shower heads came on, is gas going to come out or is water going to come out? I think in that situation they would have been thinking that, and maybe not. So
it did put you in their headspace.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why it's legitimate.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, exactly. It's legitimate because I can absolutely imagine this happening, and you can say it's a cinematic trope, but I just think that at the end of the day is realistic. It can be a trope, but it can also be realistic. I can definitely imagine. If not specifically those, Jews who Schindler rescued, or the Jews, experiencing that moment as well, and having that same like tension build up. Yeah, are these going to be my final moments, or is it just going to be water? I definitely think that would have occurred. So, but yeah, basically Haneke said that the only I think Holocaust movie that's worth watching is the 1956 movie Night in Fog. That's it.
Yes.
Alan Reds. That was the film.
I decided to say it in French because I'm cool.
Oh, good for you.
So it's called Nuit et Brouillard.
Yes. Anything that treats such a subject as entertainment is despicable. That's what he said. So he really went after Spielberg, he said.
What a grumpy guy.
Yeah. And Spielberg said basically, I have to be as close to reality of the people that we interviewed, and that told us what it was like for them. So yeah. This is what they were thinking, these Jews, and of course they survived because they weren't gassed, and this is what they were thinking at the time.
No, I think some people, they get a little bit touchy. No, but I do think there are people who like kind of they're unreasonably moralistic in terms of not rising. Well, there are legitimate reasons. I think there's some people who like they have like a way they think about something, and they fail to realize that like someone else can think about it another way. So he's probably like watching and he's like, oh, that seems to me like it's just trying to like create excitement, and that's not appropriate. But yeah, obviously I think what Spielberg intended was for it to make you empathize with the fear that the women would have felt, not to be like excited.
Yeah, and no, exactly, yeah. So as the Germans begin losing the war, Goth is ordered to ship the remaining Jews to Auschwitz, and yeah, obviously I think it's so interesting that this was the Nazis' plan, because it's just so fucking stupid. It's
it's crazy. Like they're losing the war. Like they've got no resources. They're retreating on all fronts. Yeah,
well,
let's waste all this time doing this.
I think they were killing the Jews partly so the Jews wouldn't tell everyone what happened to them. So let's kill them and then nobody will know, but people will kind of notice if like millions of Jews die. So again, it's just like they're so blinded by their hatred. That was motivating them more than anything. Let's just kill these people. So Schindler asks Goth to move his workers to a munitions factory he plans to build in Brunlitz near his hometown. Goth agrees but charges a huge bribe, and of course Schindler and Stern prepare a list for people to be transferred to Brunlitz, about 1,100 names. Yeah, he comes to this realization: I've got more money than I can spend in a lifetime. Well, why don't I, spend it,
why don't I create a few more lifetimes?
Exactly, yeah. That's a good way to put it, yes. And I like how, Goth can't work it out. Like, he trusts him too much. He just doesn't believe that this guy... Yeah. He's like, well, you're scamming me, aren't you? I don't know how you're doing it, but you're scamming me.
You have some kind of funny game here.
Yeah, again, it's just... it's perfect dialogue. That's exactly what I think Goth would be thinking in this situation, because he can't conceive that Schindler values these people's lives.
Like, people say one of the reasons why Lex Luthor can never work out who Superman is because he can't believe that Superman would hide behind a dumpy kind of reporter. He's like, well, Superman would obviously want to be like a high powerful businessman or something. Yeah. So I know it's Superman, it's not really a great comparison.
It's understandable. It makes sense. So Schindler bribes the commandant of Auschwitz for their release. Obviously, these are the women who were sent to Auschwitz. At the factory, Schindler forbids the SS guards from entering the production area and encourages Jews to observe the Sabbath. Over the next 7 months, he spends his fortune bribing Nazis and buying shell casings from other companies. Due to his machinations, the factory does not produce usable armaments. He runs out of money in 1945, just as Germany surrenders. Again, I'm not sure if that actually happened, but that was pretty cool if it did.
I will say, just one real quick thing. At the end, he does this whole thing about, I could have saved more lives.
Well, we're going to get to that.
I was just going to say, if he hadn't spent as much money... Germany was losing the war anyway. He could have made the factory be productive, and he could have bought a few more Jews.
Yeah, I mean, but then you're killing You know, it's
killing the Soviets.
Like
who we love.
he does not know how bad the situation is. With Germany.
Yeah, you are right. Yeah,
like I think from the outside, but he's being fed like German propaganda. You know, the Nazis are saying, "Oh, things aren't that bad," even though everybody kind of knows things are bad. But I don't imagine he knew how bad things were.
You know how like in World War One, like one of the reasons why everyone started hating the Jews is because they believed that Germany was like winning the war, so they thought they must have been betrayed. I imagine if Germany just got stuck on a permanent loop, where like every single time they lose a war, they're like, "I thought we were winning. It must have been the Jews betrayed us."
It's the same thing in 45. I swear, like the Germans were so surprised that they were losing in 45.
It must be nice in a way to just be like, to just like, because you don't have that like horrible like existential dread of being like, oh no, we're losing. It's just like you're like, we're winning. Oh, it's over. Okay.
Oh, it's the same thing in every fucking war.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of.
It's the same thing in the Iraq war.
Yeah,
it's the same thing in the war in Ukraine. It's like been a stalemate for fucking 2 years. Yeah. And it's like, and I don't know if Ukrainians or Westerners. I don't know what the average perception is in the West, to be honest, regarding Ukraine. But like this war could have ended like over a year ago because no one's had made any progress.
Yeah,
but it's we have to keep going, and there's propaganda being spewed on both sides. Of course,
we're just one more push, guys. Come on,
about the situation, and that's tales all this time, war propaganda. So I am surprised the Nazis let Schindler get away with all this, but I guess the bribes were good, and I guess it happened in real life, so I can't say it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess like they were killing all the Jews and they were fighting a war. Maybe they were like, so they just didn't have time to allot for taking down saboteurs.
Yes, so as a Nazi member and war profiteer, Schindler must flee the advancing Red Army to avoid capture. Bidding farewell to his workers, he prepares to head west, hoping to surrender to the Americans. The workers give him a signed statement attesting to his role in saving Jewish lives and present him with a ring. Schindler breaks down in tears, feeling he should have done more, and is comforted by the workers. Yeah, again, I think it is how he would feel when he's, saying, I should have saved more. A number, I think there was a number mentioned, which was like 4,000 before. He threw that number out, and of course only 1,200 of those were saved by him. So he went from, making money, obviously that was his primary goal. Now saving lives is his primary goal. And he realizes, he would be filled with regret because that's your main goal now. Let's save as many lives as possible. And you all you can do is like start thinking of like, I could have saved 10 here, I could have saved a life here, this is gold, that I could have traded it for a life. That's what you would start thinking. I think that is completely realistic because although he saved 1,100 people, I think it would be evident to him and everyone else just how many Jews, of course, died. Like it's just it's a tiny number compared to the amount that were killed. And so if your goal was let's save as many as possible, it's understandable that one of your emotions would be despair at the fact that it's comparatively to the amount that died, you saved so little. But of course, those 1,100 people will be eternally grateful, like Stern said.
Yeah, they had that line like, "He who saves one life saves the world entire." And obviously, there's that story about the kid who's helping the turtles get down the beach. And the man says, "You won't get all the turtles. You won't be able to get them all down the beach. So it won't make a difference." And the kid says, "For this turtle, it makes a difference."
Yeah.
Yeah, but like at the same time, like almost that's one of the nice things to think. But then you think he's also kind of like just saving one more would have made even more. Like if saving one life is a big deal, then just saving one more life. So it kind of makes sense that he has like this agonizing sense of like every single individual person he didn't save. He's like, imagine how much better it would have been if I just at one point saved one other person. Yeah,
I know. Again, that's the. So he goes from like I think his initial reaction is I could have saved more. Like he could have saved a lot more, and then you're right. He transitions to I guess the next logical step which is just God, if only I could have saved one more. Like instead of thinking about the big picture, just the little things like here and there that he's kicking himself over. So no, I think it's a very good reaction, and I think Spielberg put that. Well, we'll talk about the ending right now. So author Jason Epstein commented that the movie gives the false impression that if people were smart enough or lucky enough, they could survive the Holocaust. And again, I just think this is such a stupid criticism because it's like, well,
idiots.
These 1,100 people did survive the Holocaust. This is a true story. Yeah. So how can you say it gives a false impression? This is fucking happened in real life. These 1,100 people were smart, I think is not the case, but they were
lucky.
They were lucky enough to be at this concentration camp, and they were lucky enough to be working for Oskar Schindler. And compared to all the other Jews, of course, they were lucky, and that is just how it happened. So
I tend to think like like my genuine take about this, like when people talk about like systemic issues, I feel like a lot of time people talk about like systemic things like genocide and things like that. They act as if there's no sense in which it can be kind of individualized, and it can be.
But this is a fucking true story, though.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like like it's kind of like things like, and by way of analogy, even with like racism and things like obviously systemic racism is a real problem and it's not a personal thing, but you can have a black person who on an individual level succeeds despite systemic racism. You can have a Jewish person who on an individual level, even through like their own actions, like for example Stern, that is his name, isn't it?
Yes.
Like you could say that he does take initiative, and while obviously he's lucky to have found Schindler, he also does his own actions, and there's no contradiction between saying that he did that as an individual, but also there was the systemic stuff going on.
Again, you can create these fictional stories. Again, maybe there's a debate what is offensive and what's not offensive, what's giving a false impression, and what's not maybe doing something which is of course creating something which didn't happen, but also then sticking to the truth kind of. But this is not any of it. This is fucking
this
true.
happened.
This literally happened. So again, it's stupid criticism. Spielberg also responded to the criticism that Schindler's breakdown, as he says farewell, is too maudlin and even out of character by pointing out that the scene is needed to drive home the sense of loss and to allow the viewer an opportunity to mourn alongside the characters on the screen. Yeah, and I can imagine him breaking down. Like, it's out of character, and that's what kind of makes it so powerful, Because, like, if there is a moment that he would break character and just, cry and just be very emotional, it would be this scene. So that is understandable. Bartov wrote that, this is another criticism. The repulsive kitsch of the last two scenes undermines much of the film's previous merits. This is what he says. He describes
Nancy.
He describes the humanization of Schindler as banal, and is critical of what he describes as the Zionist closure set to the song Jerusalem of Gold. Okay, we're going to talk about
that's interesting,
the Zionist thing in a second. But again, like, Schindler, I mean, his humanization, I think, is, legitimate. I think it's justified, considering what he did, the movie makes a point. He's talking to another industrialist who is, who uses Jewish labor, I imagine. And he's saying to him, look, you can save a lot of Jews like I'm doing. You can do what I'm doing here, this guy's like, no, I can't do it. And I think that scene is in that movie to clearly show what Schindler did was very heroic. Like, there was a lot of fear. Imagine saving all these Jews from the Nazis right under the Nazis' nose almost. That would be a crime, of course.
Yes.
A very serious one if the Nazis learn about his motivations. And yes, there was a lot of fear. And again, he's talking to this businessman. He's like, no, I can't do it. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. He's too cowardly to do it. And of course, Schindler was heroic in doing so. And I think you can clearly see with that, yes, he deserved to be humanized, of course. Like, there is no other Oscar Schindler. There is no other story like this that happened in the Holocaust, Michael. Is there? Is there? No. And okay, so the end point, right? And this is a separate point, of course. He is critical of what he describes, Bartov, as Zionist closure, set to the song Jerusalem of Gold. Okay, so obviously the Soviet officer comes to the Jews and says, you can't go east, you can't go west. Where are you gonna go?
Where are they gonna go?
Where are they gonna go? And of course, the movie ends in Israel, and set to the song Jerusalem of Gold. Well, that's the Jews. They managed to find Israel. Thank God they found Israel. They now are safe because of Israel. Things worked out for the best because now they have Israel again, and that right there is I think that is what Spielberg is intending. I think that is what he's saying with the end of this movie. There's too many, the Soviet officers' dialogue, the song, the fact that the movie is set in Israel at the end of the movie in color, of course, like everything's okay now. Yeah, no, I think that is what is what he's implying, and of course, how did the Jews end up getting Israel? What happened in 1947, I think, with the Nabka.
Nabka.
Yeah. Again, maybe that could be the sequel.
Yes.
To this movie. Yeah, another bit of
you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, another nice bit of ethnic cleansing in this story, which was omitted from the movie. Yeah. So again, that I definitely think that was intended, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, shall we say? Yeah. Anyway, let's conclude now, Michael. You go first.
Yeah. So overall, I do agree with that final point. I don't know how much it besmirches the movie in terms of the quality. Obviously, right now is a particular time where it's hard not to think about it. Like I said from the beginning, the main strength is the character stuff. We didn't really mention themes. I think the themes are pretty obvious. Like the themes kind of just come with the movie.
I mean, we didn't specifically say this.
No,
is
exactly,
theme,
yeah, because the themes are about like fascism and racism, tolerance, things
Evil,
like that. Money and cynicism. With that said, and there's also, I think there is a real art to the movie with the performances and the shots. overall, I think I'm going to give the movie high 8. I was thinking the other thing I might give it is a low 9, but I'm going to go for a high 8 just because I think like it's really good in terms of the character performance. But I don't really know if there's that much that I could like say I really loved about the movie except for the character performance. I think everything else is kind of just fine, but like this movie, it's not a movie that like I'm just like wow, I'm like blown away. I'm like, yeah, it's really good, but I'm not blown away by it, which would be like kind of more 9 territory. Maybe if I was being a bit more generous, I would give it a low 9, but let's just say I'm giving it a high 8. I'm knocking it down 1 for the Zionism. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I think an 8.5 or a 9 is a fair rating.
Yeah,
I think that again Spielberg does a really good job here, so I'm going to put it as a 9. Apart from
I didn't realize you hated Palestinians.
Yeah, no, if it wasn't for that ending, maybe it'd be a 9.5, maybe. But yeah, I think the ending is obviously, you could talk about that, but obviously the vast majority of the movie is very good. He had a difficult task to pull off Spielberg, and I think he does it, expertly. We see, of course, Schindler's character arc. There are some, where it's a feel-good story in some respects, and that's hard to do when a lot of your movie is about the Holocaust. But the tone never really feels poorly done. At the end it's kind of inspiring. It's emotional. It's feel good, but throughout the rest of the movie it's really not. I think that was the correct decision. Obviously, he wants to show. I understand why he didn't want to go too far, like with showing what happened at Auschwitz, because that would be that if you go that far, then that kind of overshadows Schindler's character arc. So I think Spielberg had to, he had to balance things, and he did that well, like I said. So I am going to give this a movie a 9 out of 10. An expertly done story about an inspirational guy, Oskar Schindler, and also one of the most horrible tragedies in human history, the Holocaust. It's tough to get those two things to work in your movie, but he did it. That's why it's so good. And obviously Michael, that's it. That's the end of the year. The end of our Schindler's List review. What are we doing next time in 2024?
Next time, we're doing, a similar movie, a movie we've even mentioned in this review already. We're doing Oppenheimer, and I believe this is because we're looking at, movies nominated for Best Picture.
Well, kind of.
It hasn't
been nominated yet, but also, they
haven't revealed that yet. But yeah, so obviously, as everyone knows, we kind of enter our Oscar period, so it almost certainly will be nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, and I think
a good reason to look
we're
at
doing like a World War II / Cold War kind of thing, because
there's several.
Schindler's List, then of course Oppenheimer, and then afterwards
Doctor Strangelove.
We're doing Doctor Strangelove. So join us next time for Oppenheimer. Have you been Michael?
I've been Michael.
I've been Luke. Thanks for listening, and have a Merry Christmas, everyone. Goodbye.
Have a happy Hanukkah
and a Happy New Year and a Happy Hanukkah.
Bye.